Welcome back, children. Next we'll see our respiratory system. Right. Continue our respiratory system. Now you know that the bronchi in the chest cavity is going into the two lungs. Okay. So human beings are fitted with a pair of lungs. The right lung is little bigger and the left lung is little smaller than the right one. The right one has 3 lobes. Inside the lungs there are 3 compartments or lobes, and the left one has only 2 lobes. And you can see a notch here which is there for this is the place where the heart is found. Heart is tilted slightly towards the left side, right? So that is why the notch on this left lung. Okay. And each lungs is covered by a double membranous structure called as pleura. And in between the two pleural membrane there is a pleural fluid. Now it helps to lubricate the surface of the lungs and also helps to prevent friction between the two membranes. Okay. And the bronchi goes inside these lungs and divide into further branches called as bronchioles, and the bronchioles will finally lead to small balloon-like or sac-like structures called as millions of sac-like structures called as alveoli, and the alveoli forms the structural and functional unit of lungs. Okay, and it forms it is the place where there is exchange of the gases take place. Exchange of oxygen and CO2 take place in the alveoli region. Now next we'll see what are the steps in the process of breathing. The first step is breathing, which is the exchange of gases between atmosphere and the nostrils. First step, right? Breathing, which is okay, or at least from between air and the lungs, you can say, which is the first step, which is the breathing, or it is also called as pulmonary ventilation. What is it called? Pulmonary ventilation. And from there, the next step, second step is there is gas exchange between the lungs and the alveoli, lung alveoli and the blood. You know the alveoli, the balloon-like structures are supported by, are highly vascular. That means it is supported by blood vessels or blood capillaries, you should say. Right. So the first step is pulmonary ventilation. Now the air has reached the lungs, and from the lungs, or you can say finally to the alveoli, and from the alveoli the oxygen is given into the blood for exchange of CO2. Okay, so this is the second step, exchange of gases between alveoli and the blood. Third step is transport. The blood will transport oxygen as well as CO2 from and to and fro from the lungs to the tissues, right? So this is the third step. The fourth step is at the tissue level. At the tissue level also there is now the blood is carrying oxygen. Okay, the oxygen is given into the tissues and takes back the CO2 in return for oxygen. So this is the next step. So which is that? It is the exchange of gases between the blood and the tissues, right? And then what is the next step? The cells, the tissues will use this oxygen for respiration or cellular respiration. So these are the steps. Okay. Now what are the steps in the breathing? The first step is breathing, you know that. Okay. Breathing includes taking in of air and giving out of CO2, right? The taking in of air is called as inspiration. The process is called inspiration or inhalation, and the giving out process is called as expiration or exhalation. Inhalation or inspiration and expiration or exhalation, right? Okay. How is this breathing, that is inspiration and expiration, brought about? You have seen that the two lungs rests on a muscular band of tissue which is called as the diaphragm. Okay, the diaphragm is a muscular band which separates our body into thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. The lungs is present in our thoracic cavity. Okay, so the diaphragm is there plus the ribs. The ribs, you know what are the ribs? We have 12 pairs of ribs protecting the lungs. Yes or no? Right. The ribs is provided with two types of muscles, external intercostal muscles and internal intercostal muscles. So what are the three types of muscles, children? They are the diaphragm. One is the diaphragm, and there is the ribs are provided with external intercostal and internal intercostal muscles, right? Okay, now let us see how the inspiration is brought about. So how do you inspire or inhale gas or air? Now when the muscles has to contract, both the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles. The diaphragm is there, diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles, all these muscles contract. What will happen when it contracts? The ribs is coming out, is expanded, it is coming out, thereby increasing the volume of the thoracic cavity plus the lungs capacity, the lungs volume also is increased. You know, volume, if volume is increased means pressure is decreased. It's inversely proportional, you know that, right? Now because of this, the difference in pressure happens, right? So the pressure is more in the internal region, in the lungs and than the outside. So now because of this difference, the air from the outside passes through the nostrils to the lungs, which process is called as what? The inspiration process. Okay. Now again, how is expiration brought about? Now these muscles has to relax. Immediately when the muscles contract, it is followed by a muscle relaxation. Now the diaphragm relaxes. Now the lungs is fully filled with air, you know that, fully filled with air. Now when the diaphragm relaxes, it comes and hits or just touches the lungs, and it will force the lungs to squeeze out the air. Let us not talk about oxygen and CO2. It is the air we breathe in and air we breathe out, which contains more of oxygen. Inspired air contains more of oxygen and expired air contains more of CO2. That's the difference. Okay, right. Also, not only the diaphragm, there is internal intercostal muscles. The intercostal muscles will relax. Intercostal muscle and the diaphragm, when they relax, they come and give pressure to the lungs. Now the lungs is fully filled, right? So when there is pressure is exerted on the lungs is forced to squeeze out the air from the lungs to the outside, which is called as expiration. Okay, children. Now, so when it is relaxing, what will happen? The thoracic cavity volume, the lungs volume is decreased and the pressure is increased. And therefore the air is going out from the lungs to the air, which is expiration.